The next advanced WordPress speed optimization technique we're going to be talking about is called browser hinting. And what this is we're actually going to be telling the browser to do certain things, or suggesting them rather, i.e. hinting, to do certain things that it otherwise would not do. We're going to directly tweak the browser and tell it to do things that we want it to do, so as to perfect, or get closer to perfection, the appearance of instantaneous page loads. Now there are a bunch of these types of hints, and I'm going to include the major ones in the addendum to this section, but for the purposes of this video lecture I'm going to talk about the primary one that most of you, if you're going to use browser hinting, are going to end up using, and it is called pre-rendering. It's called prefetching in for Firefox, and pre-rendering in Chrome. Not all browsers follow these hints, and not all of them even understand them, but you can insert them and it will affect the browsers that are capable of interpreting them and applying your hints. So all of these hints, these types of hints, need to go in the head of the page. They can't go in the body, or else they're useless. They have to go in the head of the page. So we need a means by which to, an easy means, and in keeping with the theme of the course, a code-free means by which to add these hints into the head of our pages. So the way to do this, and the best means we found to do this, again, with very few instances of any kind of conflict, and it's also very user-friendly and intuitive and obvious as to how to use this. And it is a plugin called Per Page Add to Head. I will also link to this in the addendum to the section, so don't worry about that. Now you can see here we already have this installed, and the beauty of this is that you can add, it gives you a general, a global. You can add globally something in here, but what we really want to use this for, you can use this for whatever you want if you find utility in it, but for purposes of adding browser hints on a page-by-page basis, what this plugin does is add a text field. And I'll show you that. In WordPress admin, on a page-by-page and post-by-post basis, down here below, your plugin organizer, add to head right here. Put your head HTML here. Now again, for purposes of this lecture, I'm going to be talking about pre-rendering, or pre-rendering in Chrome, and prefetching in Firefox. Now what this does is, upon the page that is loading the hint, okay, I'm going to go ahead and put the hint in here. This is what it looks like. Upon the browser, the user landing on a page, the browser sees this hint. Let's say they're landing on our home page, okay? And this hint is inserted in the head of the home page. Now, what we know through our analytics is that people, the general user journey on our website, when someone lands on our home page, is that they go, their very next trip is to the process and pricing page. So they go from our home page. Do you see how instant that was? Well, what the pre-rendering hint does is tell the browser that when it's loading this page, our home page, to go ahead and in the background also load the entirety of the process and pricing page and stick it in the cache. Now remember latency, and latency is evil. We want to get rid of latency. So this is a means by which to get rid of at least the perception of latency, in that because we have given the browser the hint to go ahead, once it lands on the home page, to go ahead and process this next page that we're telling it to process, and then put it in cache. Ergo, when somebody navigates from our home page to the process and pricing page, it is an instantaneous transition. Now we further know, and again, this is you have to know, in order to effectively use this and many of the other hints, you have to know and have really planned out what the user's journey is, what their path is, what the common path is that they take. We know that from the process and pricing page, people 99% of the time go to the frequently asked questions page. Again, another immediate transition, no latency. So how we would do that is the same hint here from the process and pricing page, and obviously this will be different pages for you. Give me a moment here. I'm going to delete this hint. Now, this is relative to what you know your user's journey to be. So you would go into the relevant page. So we know that from the home page, people land on it, people then navigate to our process and pricing page. So we have put the browser hint in there to pre-render the process and pricing page. And we've put that hint in the head of the home page. And then once people take a look at our process and pricing page, they most of the overwhelming majority of the time they go to the frequently asked questions page. So we know that we want to maybe pre-render that page on the process and pricing page, given that the overwhelming majority of the time people navigate from process and pricing to the frequently asked questions page. So we then pre-render that. Someone is on the process and pricing page, yada, 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 blah, blah, blah. They read our stuff, and they want to know more. And the overwhelming majority of time, they go from there. And this can be particular. This could just replicate this based on what your user's journey is and what you know it to be. And your analytics will provide you this data. We know that over 50% of the people that land on that go from home to process and pricing to FAQ then contact us for some or another reason. What we would want to do then is, let's say that this is then the FAQ page. We will want to go to the FAQ page and change the hint to the contact us page, thereby pre-rendering it. Now, pre-rendering is resource heavy. In other words, let's say you have a 3 megabyte home page. Well, you're also in your pre-rendering whatever page your user tends to go to next. Well, that turns that initial page load from a 3 megabyte page load and a 3 megabyte cache. That adds the size of whatever page you're pre-rendering to the load, and therefore to the cache. So again, as it is with all of these things, you want to test, and in particular you want to use webpagetest.org. So the long and short of it is that this is a really good way, an advanced way, but a really good way to further eliminate that latency. We want to eliminate latency to the extent that we possibly can. We want it gone. And if you can, this is sort of a trick. It's a trick on the eye, much in the same way as image compression is. The user doesn't actually, it's not actually taking less time for the page that they're navigating to load. It's that it's being loaded while the page they are on, or while the page they initially navigated to is loading, and then being stuffed into the cache so that the appearance of the navigation to the page that has been pre-rendered is instantaneous. Now, this is a rather brutish way of doing things. It is effective, and you should really only use pre-render and most of the other hints that I will include in the addendum to this section if you really know what your user's journey is, if you've got data to back it up. The best way to do this, to eliminate latency, actually has to do with something else, something similar, pre-rendering and pre-loading in a different manner. And that different manner is something called PJAX. However, not all of you are going to be able to implement PJAX. It's a complicated thing and does not always play nice with everything else that you're going to want to do. I'm going to troubleshoot those issues, some of those issues, with you. So for those of you who are not going to be able to use PJAX, which is the upcoming lecture, the next advanced WordPress optimization that we're going to be talking about, and one of the major ingredients in WPFaster.org's secret sauce. For those of you who are not going to be able to use PJAX, this pre-rendering and browser hinting you're definitely going to want to make use of, but please do make sure that you have a firm understanding of what your user's journey is, because pre-rendering especially is resource heavy, and you don't want to be stuffing 8 megabytes worth of information into someone's browser if you're not very sure as to where they're going to go next. So there you have it. There is browser hinting.